Finale 2. The Mandates. The Middle East Divided. Chapter 1. The Ottoman Empire had fallen, but freedom did not rise in its place. Instead, the Middle East awoke to a new reality, one shaped not by its people, but by signatures written in faraway capitals. The dust had barely settled from the Arab Revolt when British and French officials arrived carrying maps that redefined everything. Borders were drawn that ignored tribes, languages, and history. Nations appeared overnight. Families found themselves split between new flags, new laws, and new rulers. The Arab dream that had fueled the revolt was replaced by a foreign system called the Mandates, a polite term for occupation. A new era began, an era of tension, struggle, and awakening. Chapter 2. In Damascus, the shock of defeat still hung in the air. Only months earlier, Arab flags fluttered proudly over government buildings. Crowds celebrated what they believed was their independence. Faisal walked through the streets like a king in waiting. But the French took everything. French officers marched into the city with cold determination. Their orders were clear: remove the Arab government, establish French control, put down any resistance. Faisal was forced into exile. Arab ministers were dismissed. The city that once celebrated liberation now stood silent. But silence is not the same as acceptance. Across Syria, anger began to simmer. Chapter 3. In the mountains of Syria and Lebanon, resistance fighters gathered. The French called them rebels. Locals called them heroes. These groups knew the land better than any foreign soldier. Every valley, every pass, every hidden trail. Skirmishes erupted. Convoys were ambushed. Railways were sabotaged. Entire villages suffered. Orchards were burned. Homes destroyed. Foreign control was not just political, it was enforced with fire. And yet something powerful began to take shape. A new identity, Syrian, Lebanese, Arab, united by the shared experience of resisting occupation. Chapter 4. Meanwhile, to the east, a different storm was brewing. Iraq, a land of ancient civilizations, rivers, tribes, and cities, found itself under sudden British rule. 3 former Ottoman provinces were stitched together into one nation: Basra, Baghdad, and Mosul. This was not unity. This was a puzzle forced to fit. Local leaders protested. Tribal chiefs resisted. Cities erupted in anger. In 1920, a massive uprising swept across central Iraq. Tribes attacked British outposts. Railways were sabotaged. Entire towns joined the revolt. For the British, this was unexpected. The Arab Revolt had made them believe they were seen as liberators. Now they realized the truth. Arabs wanted independence, not new masters. Chapter 5. The British crushed the revolt brutally. Aircraft bombed villages. Gunships patrolled the rivers. Punitive taxes were imposed. But even in defeat, the seeds of Iraqi nationalism were planted. Former rivals united. Religious groups stood side by side. Tribal leaders who once fought each other now fought together. The struggle for Iraq's identity had begun, and it would shape the century to come. Chapter 6. Farther west, the land of Palestine entered one of the most complex periods in its history. Britain took control under the guise of the Mandate, but something deeper was unfolding, something that would change the region for generations. During the war, the British had made 2 contradicting promises. To the Arabs, a future independent state.
To the Zionist movement, support for a Jewish national home in Palestine. Two promises, both written with confidence. Two promises impossible to fulfill together. Two promises that needed only time to ignite into conflict. Arab communities felt betrayed once more. Jewish immigrants, fleeing persecution in Europe, arrived hopeful for a homeland. British officials stood in the middle, uncertain, overwhelmed, and often biased. The land became a triangle of tension. Every group felt threatened. Every group felt entitled. Every group believed history supported their cause. The stage for one of the world's longest and most emotional conflicts was quietly being built. Chapter 8. Back in the Arabian Peninsula, Sharif Hussein's dreams continued to crumble. The British no longer needed him as they once did. Their tone shifted. Their support weakened. His influence faded. Worse, a new power was rising from the heart of Najd, led by a determined man named Ibn Saud. While Sharif Hussein had fought for Arab unity, Ibn Saud fought for control of Arabia itself. He built alliances. He conquered key regions. His forces advanced with discipline and purpose. Soon, the two leaders, once distant rivals, became direct opponents. A battle for Arabia began, one based not on foreign diplomacy, but on local power. Chapter 8. Across the region, the mandates pushed harder. In some places, resistance was crushed. In others, underground movements formed. But everywhere, one truth became clear. Foreign control might divide the land, but it was also uniting hearts. People who once saw themselves as tribes, cities, or religious communities began seeing themselves as something larger. Iraqis, Syrians, Lebanese, Palestinians, Arabs. Identity born from resistance, unity born from betrayal. The mandates had created new borders, but they had also awakened a new generation that would soon fight to erase them. As Part 1 ends, the Middle East stands in a fragile balance. Borders have been drawn. Kings have been appointed. Armies have landed. Resistance has begun. But nothing is settled. Nothing is stable. The future waits like a storm on the horizon.
Finale 2. The Mandates, the Middle East Divided. Chapter 10. While British and French officials tightened their grip on the Middle East, they also began constructing a political system they claimed would bring stability. But stability built on foreign promises is never steady. New kings were crowned, not by their people, but by the signatures of foreign ministers. In Iraq, after the 1920 uprising shocked British leadership, London needed a solution that would calm the region without requiring endless military force. Their answer was to import a king, someone with legitimacy, prestige, and symbolic power. And so the British brought back Faisal, the son of Sharif Hussein, who had led Arab forces into Damascus. They crowned him King of Iraq in 1921. To many Iraqis, this felt like a compromise. To the British, it was strategy. To Faisal, it was a second chance at leadership. But beneath the surface, Iraq remained fractured. Chapter 11. Baghdad's political elite debated constantly. Tribal leaders near the Euphrates resisted British influence. Mosul's Kurdish population questioned the new borders. Shia communities demanded representation. Faisal had inherited a throne, but not a united nation. He worked tirelessly, traveling, negotiating, uniting tribes, calming religious disputes. He attempted what no one had tried before, turning three very different Ottoman provinces into one functioning state. Some admired him, some distrusted him. All watched him carefully. The question hovered over Iraq like a desert storm. Could a British-installed king truly unite a divided land? Chapter 12. Meanwhile, in Transjordan, a land carved out almost casually by British diplomats, Faisal's brother Abdullah rose to power. Initially arriving with the intention to fight the French in Syria, Abdullah instead became the emir of a new territory, Transjordan. He inherited a land with few resources, scattered tribes, and no centralized government. But Abdullah was patient, diplomatic, and skilled in negotiation. He built alliances with tribes. He balanced British expectations with local demands. He created a stable administration from almost nothing. In a region carved by outsiders, Abdullah forged a sense of belonging. Chapter 13. In Syria, resistance against French rule flared stronger than ever. The French used heavy force to crush uprisings, but each crack of their artillery awakened deeper unity in the people. One revolt changed everything: the Great Syrian Revolt of 1925. It began in the mountains of the Druze region under the leadership of Sultan al-Atrash, a charismatic and fearless commander. What started as local defiance exploded into a nationwide rebellion. Cities joined the fight. Villages took up arms. Students marched in the streets. Arab nationalists published manifestos demanding independence. The French responded brutally. They bombed Damascus. They shelled neighborhoods. Historic markets burned for days. Smoke rose over a city thousands of years old, a symbol of foreign control trying desperately to hold on. The revolt was eventually suppressed, but it changed Syria forever. It united classes, religions, and regions against a common enemy. It created national heroes. It transformed identity into purpose. Chapter 14. In Lebanon, the challenge was different. Under French mandate, it was shaped into a separate political entity, a nation designed with a delicate religious balance. While many Lebanese welcomed independence from Ottoman rule, others feared foreign manipulation. Communities began to drift apart politically, even as they lived side by side. But intellectuals in Beirut, writers, poets, philosophers, pushed a new cultural renaissance. They discussed identity, nationalism, and the future. Beirut became the Middle East's intellectual capital, a city of ideas and debate. Yet beneath the surface, political cracks were already forming, cracks that would widen in the decades ahead. Chapter 15. In Palestine, the situation was far more complex. British rule placed Arabs and Jewish immigrants on a collision course, fueled by conflicting promises Britain had made during the war. Arab families who had lived on the land for generations felt increasingly threatened. Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution arrived hopeful for a homeland. British officials struggled to control rising tensions. Clashes broke out. Communities accused each other of expansion. Mistrust hardened into fear. Fear hardened into anger. By the late 1920s, the British realized they were losing control, not because one side was stronger, but because both believed history was on their side. There was no easy compromise, and every British attempt to fix the situation made it worse. Chapter 16. Across the Arabian Peninsula, the rivalry between Sharif Hussein and Ibn Saud reached its final stages. Hussein dreamed of a united Arab kingdom. Ibn Saud dreamed of a unified Arabian state under his rule. One dream was high and idealistic. The other was grounded, strategic, and supported by powerful alliances. Ibn Saud's forces, disciplined, motivated, and backed by religious momentum, swept across the peninsula. They captured city after city. Allies of Hussein switched sides. British attention shifted away. By 1925, Mecca and Medina fell into the hands of Ibn Saud. Sharif Hussein's kingdom collapsed. The Hashemite dynasty retreated to Jordan and Iraq. The House of Saud rose. A new power had emerged, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Arabian Peninsula would never look the same again. Chapter 17. Meanwhile, Arab intellectual movements grew rapidly. Universities expanded. Newspapers flourished. Writers challenged colonial narratives. Students formed political groups. British and French authorities tried to suppress dissent, but ideas cannot be silenced with force. Knowledge spread faster than armies. Identity deepened. Nationalism matured. A new generation was rising. A generation that would not accept foreign rule. A generation ready for struggle. A generation that would define the next battles of the Middle East. As Part 2 ends, the region reaches a turning point. Kings rule thrones created by foreign powers. Revolts erupt in every direction. Borders create new loyalty lines and new tensions. Communities reshape their identity. Foreign influence tightens and fractures at the same time. But now, something new is happening. The people are beginning to challenge the world drawn for them.
Finale 2. The Mandates. The Middle East Divided. Chapter 19. By the 1930s, the mandates have lasted more than a decade, long enough to reshape politics, society, and identity in every corner of the Middle East. But something unexpected had happened. Foreign powers had created borders, but they had also created unity. Every act of repression, every broken promise, every foreign policy decision pushed Arabs closer together. Nationalism was no longer an idea. It was a movement, a force, a generation's destiny. From Baghdad to Damascus, from Jerusalem to Cairo, the region began to vibrate with new energy. Chapter 20. In Iraq, King Faisal worked tirelessly to stabilize the country. He balanced tribes, religious communities, and political factions. He built schools, roads, and an army. He encouraged Iraqi identity above all others. But tensions remained. British officials still controlled key decisions. Oil companies shaped the economy. Political factions argued over independence timelines. Still, a new Iraqi nationalism was rising, one that demanded full sovereignty. In 1932, Iraq became the first mandate state to gain formal independence, though British influence continued quietly behind the scenes. The message was clear. Foreign powers could delay independence, but they could not stop it. Chapter 21. In Syria, the spirit of rebellion never faded. Even after the crushing of the Great Syrian Revolt, underground groups continued organizing. Writers published political essays in secret. Students formed nationalist circles. Leaders negotiated with the French relentlessly. In 1936, after years of pressure, France signed a treaty promising Syrian independence. But then a familiar pattern returned. The promise was delayed, postponed, reconsidered. The Syrian people learned once again that foreign words did not guarantee their freedom. Only persistence did. And so the movement surged forward. Chapter 22. Lebanon, shaped into a separate nation under French design, faced its own internal struggle. Different communities clashed politically, but something unique emerged, a cultural renaissance. Beirut became a lighthouse of Arab literature, journalism, and political thought. The city produced ideas that spread across the region, fueling nationalism everywhere. But beneath the intellectual beauty, pressure built. People demanded political reforms. Youth movements pushed for unity. The mandate no longer looked like protection. It looked like a cage. Meanwhile, in Palestine, the situation reached a critical breaking point. British rule placed Arabs and Jewish communities in a volatile balance. Clashes intensified. Land purchases increased tensions. Immigration surged. Both groups feared losing their future. In 1936, the Arab population launched a massive uprising, known as the Great Arab Revolt. It began with strikes, massive, coordinated, nationwide. It evolved into armed resistance. Villages formed militias. Political leaders united under a single demand: stop British control, stop mass immigration, give us independence. The British responded with overwhelming force. Armored cars rolled into cities. Planes bombed resistant strongholds. Leaders were exiled. Homes destroyed. The revolt was crushed, but its impact was enormous. It marked the beginning of a conflict that would shape the next century, and it exposed one truth: Britain could no longer control Palestine without severe consequences. Chapter 25. Farther south, the Arabian Peninsula stabilized under a new power, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, officially declared in 1932. Ibn Saud had united tribes that no one dreamed could be united. He conquered rivals. He negotiated with foreign powers. He centralized authority. He brought order to a land once fragmented. While the mandate struggled, Saudi Arabia emerged as the first fully independent Arab state of the modern era, and soon oil discoveries would transform its role in global politics. A new heavyweight entered the region. Chapter 25. Across the Middle East, a deeper transformation unfolded: the birth of modern nationalism. Students formed movements demanding sovereignty. Writers published revolutionary ideas. Workers organized strikes. Women joined political organizations. Exile leaders returned with renewed determination. The dream of independence spread from city to village, river to desert, coastline to mountain. Foreign powers had redrawn the region, but now the region's people were rewriting their destiny. Chapter 26. By the late 1930s, Europe stood on the brink of yet another catastrophic war: the Second World War. The great powers were distracted, their attention shifted, their resources drained. And for the Arabs, opportunity appeared again. Nationalist leaders realized, this is our moment. If Europe is busy fighting itself, the Middle East can rise. Revolts strengthened. Negotiations resumed. Mass protests erupted. Underground networks expanded. The mandates were no longer sustainable. History was turning. Chapter 27. As the world plunged into war, British and French authority weakened across the region. Supplies dwindled. Armies withdrew. Morale collapsed. Communication lines broke down. In Iraq, a nationalist coup challenged British dominance. In Syria and Lebanon, Free French forces promised independence. In Palestine, tensions escalated dramatically, setting the stage for future confrontation. The Middle East was no longer a passive land drawn on foreign maps. It was a region moving towards its own destiny. Chapter 28. A new era was beginning, one where the Arab people demanded their voice, their borders, their identity, their independence. The mandates tried to divide them, but instead they created a generation determined to unite. The question was no longer if independence would come,
but how violent, how painful, and how lasting the struggle would be. Chapter 30. This brings us to Finale 3, the story of independence, war, partition, refugees, new nations, betrayal, hope, and a conflict that continues to shape global politics today. The final chapter begins with the land everyone claimed and no one was willing to share. End of Finale 2.